others not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. At this time, all members and guests in the galleries will please rise. In lieu of prayer today, Anna Marie Butler, wife of the gentleman, the 14th Delegate Butler, will be singing "You Rise Me Up," or "You Raise Me Up."
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when trouble comes and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. Dear Lord, be with this legislature today, Lord. Guide them, show them the way. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. God lifts me up as I can stand on mountains. God lifts me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on his shoulders. God lifts me up to more than I can be. God lift me up so I can stand on mountains. He raised me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. God, lift us up to more than we can be.
Members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning by Delegate Butler.
Members and guests, please join me as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Wednesday, March 6, 2019.
The Gentleman of the 48th, Douglas Queen.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read.
The Gentleman of the 48th asks unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Introduction to guests. Introduction of guests. The Gentleman of the 17th, Douglas Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome a couple deputies from Cabell County. They're here in the gallery today. Gentlemen, stand up. House, please make them feel welcome.
The lady from the 32nd, Delegate Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the West Gallery, so they can be closer to heaven, is my dear friend Elliot Pritt, Ashley, and Abel. If they'll stand up, you all give them a big welcome.
The Gentleman of the 10th, Douglas Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce a former delegate from 30 years ago and now Mayor of Huntington, Steve Williams. Please stand, Steve.
Are there further introductions? If not, Chair recognizes the lady from the 49th for a calendar update.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the calendar today, the Rules Committee moved from special calendar to House calendar on third reading, Senate Bill 233. From House calendar to special calendar on second reading, Senate Bill 605. I would also like to inform the body that we expect tonight to take up committee substitute for House Bill 2020, the budget bill. All the information pertaining to that bill will be located in the chamber automation system for your review. And if you'd like a hard copy of that, please see the clerk's office after session. Also, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to proceed immediately to consideration of bills on third reading.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent to proceed immediately to consideration of bills on third reading. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. House will proceed to consideration of bills on third reading. For what purpose does the gentleman from the 9th, Douglas Holland, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't believe I was able to get in time to introduce the doctor. Is there still time to do that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The doctor today comes to us from Clendenin. Please welcome Dr. Kimberly Becker.
First bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 4, relating generally to municipal home rule program.
The gentleman of the 56th, Douglas Howell, is recognized. The gentleman of the 28th, Douglas Pack, is recognized to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker, may I proceed to the amendment first? The bill is advanced.
The bill was advanced to third reading with amendments pending. If the gentleman believes that no explanation of the bill is necessary before consideration of the amendments, then the gentleman may proceed to consideration of amendments. Are there amendments?
The Committee on Government Organization moves to amend the bill. This is HGOAM 3-4.
The gentleman of the 28th, Douglas Pack, is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to make our home rule program permanent. The committee amendment modifies the Senate bill by removing the references to the West Virginia Workplace Freedom Act and Labor Management Relations Act provisions from the list of laws which municipalities may not contradict. It moves the limitations on rental property to a new subsection. The amendment adds referendum language provided by the Municipal League, which clarifies if a municipality's charter provides for a referendum, then the charter's provisions apply. It also adds the requirement that bonds be put to a vote of the residents. The bill adds a list of items, as I said, that municipalities may not contradict by adding laws governing professional licensing, enforcement of fire and building codes, federal laws that would affect the state's required compliance or jeopardize federal funding, laws governing procurement of architectural and engineering services, Chapter 17C traffic regulations, laws governing communication technologies and telecom carriers, Municipalities are also prohibited from imposing duties on other government entities unless explicitly permitted by law, may not limit the rental of property unless done in a uniform manner. The Home Rule Board will continue in its present format and may develop administrative rules for the program. These rules must be published on the board's website and be made available at the public in print upon request. Each municipality participating in the Home Rule program will pay an annual assessment fee of $2,000 toward the operation of the Home Rule Board. Failure to comply in time will result in an additional $2,000 penalty fee. The assessments will be deposited in a special revenue account to be known as the Home Rule Board Operations Fund. If at the end of the fiscal year the unencumbered balance in the fund is $200,000 or more, annual assessments will be suspended until the fund balance is insufficient to meet operational expenses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair is in receipt of several secondary amendments. In other words, amendments to the amendment as just explained by the gentleman from the 28th. The first 3 of them are conflicting amendments. The chair will allow the first 2 of the 3 to explain their amendments, which will then be followed by consideration by the House. Then the third of the secondary amendments is a provision to strike out the entirety of that same section. So the chair will permit perfection of the section before consideration of a motion to strike the entirety of the section. So at this time, chair recognizes the gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Jeffries, to explain the first of the secondary amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment would strike out on page 9, section 5A, line 212, following the word event by striking out 30% of the qualified voters and inserting in lieu thereof 15% of the qualified voters voting in the last election. And also on page 9, section 5A, line 214, striking out within 45 days. What my amendment would do was would bring the referendum into uniformity with most cities that they currently hold across the state. Everything that I've looked up is 10 or 15% for the referendum. There's no city in the state that has more than 15%, and I think this would just be making it a more workable referendum. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'd urge passage.
The second of the secondary amendments related to that section is offered by the gentleman from the 32nd, Delegate Fast. These would be mutually exclusive amendments. Adoption of either of them would preclude consideration of the second. Does the gentleman from the 32nd wish to explain the second secondary amendment?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's important to understand when we talk about these 2 competing amendments that the strike and insert that underlies all of these amendments right now has referendum language in it, wherein if the way it's written right now, if 30% of the qualified voters of the municipality by petition sign a petition and then submit those names to the recorder, and they do that within 45 days of the passage of the ordinance, then what that does, it forces the issue then, before it becomes effective, it forces it to go onto a vote for a citywide election, wherein the voters would have the option to approve or disapprove of the ordinance. It could be any type of an ordinance. And it's also important to understand that the bill as it came over from the Senate does not have referendum language in it. So just keep that in mind as we proceed. The gentleman that just spoke on his amendment, it would allow, it changes the 30% threshold of the qualified voters to 15% of the qualified voters who voted in the last election. My amendment would simply change the 30% of qualified voters to 15% of the qualified voters. My amendment would go such as follows. If you have a city, let's take Parkersburg. Parkersburg has roughly 30,000 residents. If you guesstimate that approximately 1/3 of those, if after you take out children and those too young to vote, let's say you had a third of those 30,000 registered to vote, you would have 10,000 registered voters. At the existing 30%, you would have to gather 3,000 signatures before you could, the home body, the home people, could have a matter placed on the ballot for election. However, if my amendment were adopted, it would be 1,500 signatures that would be necessary. It's a good number. It's still not, that's a number, it's going to require substantial effort to gather those signatures, but yet it's not going to be so low that you could just have a referendum on every ordinance that gets passed. And also, my amendment would take out the within 45 days, and I believe that was the case in the previous amendment as well. So that way, this truly puts home rule in home rule. It gives the power to the people, if they take the initiative to gather a threshold of signatures, then it doesn't kill an ordinance. What it does, it says, hey, we're going to vote on that as a city, and we're going to see if we want that as a city or if we don't. That could apply to a new local tax. It could apply to a zoning ordinance. It could apply to a noise pollution ordinance. It truly puts the power within the hands of the people, and it puts home rule in home rule. So I would encourage adoption of the amendment, and I will state that, well, I'll withhold argument later on other amendments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is consideration of the two secondary amendments as just explained by the gentleman from the 22nd and the 32nd. The chair will entertain debate on both amendments simultaneously and will then put the question on the first of the secondary amendments. If it is adopted, consideration on the second secondary amendment will be rendered moot. Upon conclusion of consideration of both the secondary amendments as just explained, the House will move to consideration of an additional secondary amendment which would strike the referendum language in its entirety. So the question before the House now is the two secondary amendments as just explained by the gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Jeffries, and the gentleman from the 32nd, Delegate Fast. Gentleman from the 36th, Delegate Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman from the 32nd yield?
Yes.
You gave a list.
I take the floor and yield.
You gave a list of the ordinances this would affect. Would this affect all ordinances that a municipality may put in place, or only those affected by home rule?
Well, this entire bill only affects home rule, so it would be the latter.
So only home rule ordinances or referendum or ordinances that are put in, it would only affect those?
This entire bill only affects home rule. So if a city is not home rule, this would have no effect on it whatsoever.
Yeah, ordinances that are allowed to be done under home rule would be the only ones affected by your amendment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the two secondary amendments? If not, do either of the gentlemen wish to close on their secondary amendments? If not, the question before the House is the first of the secondary amendments as explained by the gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Jeffries. Those in favor of the secondary, a roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is on the adoption of the secondary amendment as explained by the gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Jeffries. Those in favor of that secondary amendment will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 23 ayes, 75 nays, 2 members absent, not voting. Less than a majority haven't voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the amendment lost. The question is now on the second secondary amendment as explained by the gentleman from the 32nd, Delegate Fast. Those in favor of the secondary roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. Those in favor of the second secondary amendment will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 40 ayes, 58 nays, 2 members absent, not voting. Less than a majority haven't voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the amendment lost. The question now is on the third secondary amendment as offered by the gentleman from the 12th Delegate Westfall. Does the gentleman wish to explain the next secondary amendment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment's pretty simple, but it does a lot of things. It strikes out Section O, the referendum language, completely. And it strikes out Section P, the bonding language, completely. And I'd like the right to close by the gentlelady from the 3rd. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the secondary amendment as just offered by the gentleman from the 12th. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the secondary amendment? The gentleman from the 15th, Douglas Foster.
Will gentleman yield? So on this amendment, it's right now, it looks like after the failure of the previous 2 amendments, you have to get 30% of the voters, the registered voters, to recall any action by the city or municipality that makes this home rule.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So what you're doing is removing the ability of any of the voters at all, to no matter what, how many people in that municipality disagree, you're removing their ability to recall that for a vote?
Yes, sir. I'm putting back the language that came from the Senate this year and last year. Some of these municipalities might have 1,500, 2,000 people in it. Some of these elections might have 300 to 400 people vote. So if you have 350 people vote in an election, you can have 90 people go back and say, I don't like the $2 fee or $2 taxes increase on your sewer or whatever. And these cities are really tight on their budgets. And if we go in and start letting 90 people dictate to 2,000 or 3,000, well, these city elections don't have big turnouts. And you could catch one that is a small turnout, you could really turn the budget upside down and get them in more trouble than they are. So yes, again, this goes back, the last 2 years, this bill's come from the Senate without these in it. In the last 2 years, this language has been put in on this side of the House, and I just don't agree with it.
All right, thank you. Speak to the amendment.
Yes, gentleman may proceed.
Thank you. What I see this amendment doing is basically removing the right of the people to have a say in something the city does. I mean, you can have just a few people in the city make the decision, hey, we're going to tax you whatever we want, really, and on a sewer bill, as the gentleman discussed, or we're going to ban, I don't know, heck, we could ban pistols from city limits or whatever they wanted to do, or put a limit on magazine sizes for guns in the city limits, and the voters would have no chance of even saying anything about it. So I think something along the lines of 30% is, I mean, just having 30% of the voters, we can't even get that many to show up for a presidential election sometimes. Yet they're worried, people are worried about them having a say-so in their personal either finances of the taxes of the city or on a magazine-sized gun amendment or anything like that. So I would urge rejection of this amendment.
The gentleman from the 18th, Delegate Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman from the 12th yield?
Yes, sir.
I think I heard you say before, I just want to ask again, the purpose of your amendment is to remove the referendum as it was from the Senate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Can I speak to the amendment?
Yes, gentleman may proceed.
I rise in support of the amendment. Referendum language is one thing. I'll tell you, though, why do we even have elections to elect people in our municipalities? Are we going to put a 30% referendum on the legislature? There are already built-in recall provisions in a lot of charters across the state, and these are the people that represent the people closest to the people. I come from a small municipality where only about 1,000 voters vote. With this referendum language, that means 300 people could turn around and make changes or come back and do things to what we're speaking about. I apologize, lost the wording. But the whole purpose of what I'm trying to say is that we elect these people for that very reason, and why we're elected, to do things for the state of the people of West Virginia. So I completely disagree with keeping this referendum language, and I would support the gentleman's amendment to remove it entirely. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 37th, Doug Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 15th yield?
Does the gentleman from the 15th yield for a question? Gentleman does not yield.
Okay. Well, I'll just briefly say that I heard it stated that a city could make an ordinance limiting types of ammunition or guns, and that's just simply not true. Back in 2014, the year before I got here, and the year before the gentleman from the 15th got here, this body voted to make all gun ordinances uniform. A city cannot make a gun ordinance, so we wouldn't have to worry about people wouldn't have to worry about overturning one because they don't exist. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 16th, Doug Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield? I just want to make sure that I understand the subsection O accurately. It starts, in the event 30% of the qualified voters municipality goes on and so forth about the petition for a referendum. My question is, 30% of the qualified voters, is that the voters that voted in the last election, or is that just registered voters within the city?
The way I understand it, the 30% of the people that voted in the last election.
Okay.
Okay, the chairman of GovOrg is shaking his head no, so you might want to ask him.
Okay. We could, all right. Gentleman yield. Thank you, sir.
That's incorrect. It's registered voters, not the last election. So if you got a city of 10,000 registered voters, it'd be 3,000 people would have to sign a petition.
Okay, so just as a for instance, this would not allow in a situation where we might have had a special election of some kind where we had exceptionally low voter turnout for 90 people to come up and say, hey, here's your referendum.
Elections would the turnout in any election would have no effect on it.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
The lady from the 48th, Doug Waxman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I speak to this amendment?
Yes, lady, may proceed.
The way the state of West Virginia has been run is we are not allowed to take on debt. A bond is a debt. And yes, we have not had great turnout in city elections because they've not in the past been able to tax people in order to put them in further debt. So I think that we need to be very cognizant of what we're doing when we don't allow the people to rise up and disagree when a small number of people on a council are putting the whole city into further debt based on the hope of receipts from taxes further down the road. The potential for West Virginia is shrinking, not growing, with the current trends. Unless that turns around, we're going to have a lot of cities borrowing a lot of money based on a sales tax. I think we need to think long and hard and let the citizens who now have councils allowed to tax them to be able to say something before this gets implemented. I don't think it's too much to ask. So I would hope that you would vote against this amendment.
The gentleman from the 25th, Doug Painter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, history has shown us we cannot depend on the benevolence of the Crown, so obviously we need as many checks as possible for the people to keep this system honest. So with that being said, I would urge you to vote this down. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 62nd, Doug Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak to the amendment. I urge everyone to reject this amendment. This is a home rule bill. It's not a home government bill. We're not giving power to 5 city council members to decide for a city or municipality what the laws are going to be. The people rule in this state. We have 100 members in this legislature here. That's 100 people that get to say what goes on. We can't allow just 5 people to arbitrarily decide what's going to be the law and what's not going to be the law without the people having some recourse. This is the only thing that people have is a recall. So I would urge everyone to vote this down. This is not home rule. This is giving a power to a few people to decide for an entire municipality, and that municipality has no recourse. So please do not vote for this. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 3rd, Doug Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. What we haven't discussed yet is, I think, the practicability of this is that our small cities and municipalities are essentially going to freeze action because everything they do now will be under a bigger microscope, and they feel like there will be a recall on them for anything they do. If it's a sewer upgrade or anything else that needs to be done that involves infrastructure and other important facets of local governance, we are really going to put a freeze on that. This home rule has been in place now for years. It has been working. There's no reason why we should throw a wrench in it, which I think we do with this current language. That's why I support taking it out and really giving those who are elected on a local level the power to actually govern instead of always be looking over their shoulder worrying about what's going to happen next. I don't want to freeze action on the local level. We have elections for a reason. They are held accountable at a higher level than we are because they're always under a microscope. I think our local governance, they're really on the front lines more so than we are, and they can't hide from anything. So I'm not worried about the citizens not having the ability to speak up during the election season, which they frequently do on the local level. So I support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 28th, Doggett Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With sponsor yield. If I understand your amendment correctly, this would also take out the bond language. So in effect, a home rule city could institute a sales tax, take out a loan, a bond against that revenue that they anticipate to come in from the sales tax, without the voice of the people on the bond being recognized. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then in 4 years, when the next election cycle comes up, if the people are displeased with the effect of that, they could in effect vote the people out, right?
Yes, every 4 years, you pick your city council, I believe.
But the debt remains?
The debt will remain.
Okay, so as long as the debt remains, then they're burdened with that sales tax. That would remain to be true?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Will the gentleman yield to a question?
Certainly.
I've talked to a lot of municipalities over this. I was the lead sponsor of this bill last year, and on the 59th day, it died here in the House. And again this year, I sponsored this bill again, but it comes from the Senate. We did the Senate's version. What municipalities have reached out and asked for this to Section O and Section P? I've yet to talk to one.
Actually, many of the current municipalities already have this language. This would only affect those going forward.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The gentleman from the 14th, Doggett Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would either the chairman or the vice chairman of government organization yield to a question, please?
The chairman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, the home rule program is a pilot program, correct?
Correct.
So how has this worked in the past? Have we had to renew this pilot program over the years, or was it sunsetted at 5 years, or how did that work?
It's had a sunset, but it's been tweaked several times.
Okay, so we've had to come back and make adjustments and renew it to keep it going.
This is the first time we've renewed it, but we've made adjustments.
Okay. All right. So when we pass this bill today, this is making the home rule basically law. It's not going to be something we come back and have to reapprove or something, correct?
It's already law, but it would make it permanent.
Okay. So since it's going to be permanent, now and the language here is saying any ordinance, act, resolution, rule, or regulation enacted by the municipality and so forth shall continue in full force until it's repealed, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and these decisions oftentimes are made by county commissioners who serve 6-year terms?
Yes, county commission serves 6-year terms.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, speak to the amendment.
Yes, Sean, may proceed.
I think this amendment is a bad idea because those of us here in the legislature, especially obviously in the House, we're elected every 2 years, so the people have a chance to come back to us and have more an effect on us, either by asking us to change the laws every year, and then we're reelected every 2 years. So if we're not doing what they ask us to do, they can change their representation. In this case, I think with county commissioners especially, their terms are 6 years, and I think it would be very, very difficult for the people to come back and get an ordinance changed. So for that reason, I think that it's very important to have this referendum in there so that the people have a chance to say, no, we don't like this tax, or no, we don't like this ordinance, and to have a little bit of leverage over the county commissioners in my example here to get these things changed. So I think the referendum is very important. I think we need to leave the referendum in there, and I'm speaking against the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from 56, Doggett Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the gentleman's amendment. There seems to be some confusion on this, what the strike and insert from GovOrg does. The referendum only affects cities that currently do not have referendum. Most of the cities already in the home rule have a referendum. So if they have a problem with one of these ordinances, they can vote to overturn them. We're not giving them this ability. They already have it. What this amendment would do would strip the ability for the cities that currently do not have referendum from having that. And there's very few cities in home rule that the GovOrg amendment would affect. What the effect of the gentleman's amendment would do would be strip the right from a minority of cities to have referendum. Therefore, I urge rejection of the gentleman's amendment.
The gentleman from the 18th, Doggett Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 14th yield for a question?
Sure.
You talked about county commissions. What do the counties have to do with this referendum language for home rule? Because this is for municipalities, so I'm just wondering.
Okay, well, I was not in GovOrg, so we didn't have a whole long discussion on this, so that's why I was asking the questions. I thought it did apply to county commissions. Are you saying it doesn't?
No, this is for municipalities only. That's a separate bill that's not being discussed here today. This is for municipalities only, has nothing to do with counties at all.
Okay, well, I stand corrected. My point would stand, though, but thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment before the chair recognizes the lady from the 3rd to close debate? If not, lady from 3rd, Doggett Storch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage support of this amendment. The City of Wheeling has participated in the pilot program that started a number of years ago. Under that program, we have gone from 77 licenses down to 5. I heard the gentleman from the 15th say that this would take the ability away from the residents of a municipality and give it to the local government, which the people would have the opportunity to put out of office in the next election if they were not satisfied with the direction that they took. I believe the language is detrimental to the bonds that may need to be issued if there were water or sewer upgrades or something like that needs to happen. It's my understanding that they put it out for public comment period. There is a great deal of communication between the municipal elected officials and the people they represent. So to make this true home rule, we need to adopt this amendment. Thank you.
The question before the House is the adoption of the secondary amendment as offered by the gentleman from the 12th and the lady from the 3rd. A roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 56 ayes, 42 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority haven't voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the amendment adopted. The next secondary amendment is offered by the gentleman from the 47th, Delegate Phillips. Does the gentleman wish to explain the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the gentleman from the 37th alluded earlier, we do have a firearms preemption statute in this state. However, it does not contain within it protections for standard capacity magazines, which seems to be quite the trend around the country. We've got localities in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sunnyvale, Denver, Cook County, Illinois, Aurora, Illinois, Chicago, Oak Park, Illinois, Albany, New York, Buffalo, New York, Rochester, New York, all passing standard capacity magazine bans of various capacities. And I think this amendment's important to protect that in West Virginia. We've got a strong Second Amendment heritage, and we want to make sure that localities aren't infringing upon that right, and I would urge everyone to support the amendment. Thank you.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Are there members who wish to speak to the amendment? The gentleman of 36, Doggett Road.
Point of order, is the amendment germane? The statute's limited very narrowly to the municipal home rule program, and this, I think, would introduce issues that do not relate in any way to municipal home rule.
Chair does not have a copy of the amendment. The House will be at ease. House will be in order. Chair has reviewed the amendment. As remarked by members of the House earlier this morning, there is a general prohibition or a general preemption statute related to firearms and firearm-related materials in West Virginia. The amendment as offered by the gentleman from the 47th does not seek to amend that section of the code, but rather seeks to amend only the home rule section of the code such that if adopted, the provision would be applicable only to those municipalities within the home rule program and not applicable generally. Therefore, the chair would rule that the amendment would be germane to the bill. Gentleman may continue. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as explained by the gentleman from the 47th. Those a roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. Those in favor of the amendment as offered by the gentleman from the 47th will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 72 ayes, 22 nays, 6 members absent, not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there other secondary amendments?
Delegate Nelson and others move to amend the bill. This is SFA Nelson 3-6.
The gentleman of the 35th, Doggett Nelson, is recognized to explain the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is offered by the delegates out of the 35th, 36th, and 37th. And specifically, it is dealing with a section in this bill that deals with architectural and engineering services. And we want to add some language as relates to any ordinance in place by an existing city and home rule would be exempt from the sections requiring architectural and engineering services to be handled differently than they are now. In the way of some background, currently under Chapter 5G of a state code, engineering and architectural services have to give an expression of interest, and then it requires the state to select a firm prior to negotiating a price. In essence, what this means is architecture firm number one comes in gives an expression of interest in a service, then puts a price out there. There may be 3 other firms out there, but the way code is right now, the state cannot go to number 2, 3, and 4 until it deals with number 1, even though 2, 3, and 4 may be cheaper. So, the city of Charleston adopted an ordinance in 2008 under the home rule that basically allowed it to have competition amongst architectural and engineering services. And I'm going to read through a couple of points here. So it has allowed the cities to get away from this cumbersome process that is currently in state code. Charleston's ordinance allows for interviews and negotiations with up to 5 firms at one time. So there's competition involved to get the best price and the best service. The process ensures that a winning firm has sufficient qualifications and expertise to complete the job effectively. The process allows the city to save taxpayer dollars and put the best product forward. The process allows the city to start and complete projects in a more timely manner. Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption of this and the right to close, but again, I think this has proven itself here in the city of Charleston and other cities with ordinances in place right now, and we'd like to see those stay. I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just explained by the gentleman from the 35th. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, the gentleman wish to close debate. Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there other secondary? For what purpose does the gentleman from the 67th, Doug Doyle, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Had I been in the chamber on the previous roll call, I would have voted in the negative.
Delegate's preference will be noted. Are there other secondary amendments? No. If not, the question before the House now is the primary amendment offered by the Committee on Government Organization and as amended by the House. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the primary amendment? The gentleman from the 32nd, Doug Fast.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Speaker. If this primary amendment fails, then the body would vote on the bill as it came from the Senate. If this passes, then that's it, correct?
It is the chair's understanding, Delegate, that the gentleman from the 32nd, that you in fact have an amendment that would be considered if this amendment is rejected. Chair is in error. The gentleman is entitled to explain that amendment now before the body considers the primary amendment as amended. The gentleman may proceed to explain his amendment if the gentleman desires.
Another point of inquiry. If the primary amendment from government organization, in other words, a strike and insert as amended, fails, then that puts us into the mode to consider the bill as it came from the Senate. Is that correct?
The gentleman is correct.
Okay. And is it the chair's desire or the chair's direction for me to speak to the proposed amendment to the Senate bill? Do you want me to speak to it now, or do you want me to wait until after the vote now pending?
The adoption of the government organization primary amendment, which is now pending before the House, would preclude consideration of the gentleman's amendment.
I understand.
So if the gentleman wishes to explain his amendment, now would be the appropriate time.
Sure. Yes, sir.
The gentleman's not required to do so, but if he wished to do so, now would be the time.
Well, I had anticipated that if this vote fails, then I would explain the amendment. So that's why I was asking, is this direction or desire?
It's neither. Gentleman from the 35th, Del Capito.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Speaker. For the body's reference, what is the title of the gentleman's amendment that he has not yet told us whether he's going to explain or not? I thought it might be nice for the body to know.
HFA Fast 3-6, number 2.
Yes, gentleman from the 32nd, Doug Fast.
May I speak to the amendment to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, gentleman may proceed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if the strike and insert fails, I have an amendment pending on the Senate bill, and what it would do, it would reinsert into the Senate bill subsections N and O, I believe it is, the referendum. It would reinsert the referendum language into the Senate bill, or not reinsert, but it would insert the referendum language into the Senate bill. It would be 15% of the qualified voters, and it would take out the within 45 days. And may I speak to the strike and insert now?
Yes, gentleman may proceed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would urge rejection of the strike and insert, given the facts of some of the amendments. If we're going to do home rule, I think we need to do home rule. And that's what the referendum language does. It is actual home rule. So I would have to speak against the strike and insert, and then ask for adoption of the Senate bill and an amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 12th, Douglas Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the strike and insert. We spent the last 45 minutes getting a bill to come from the Senate back to the original Senate version the last 2 years. I think it's a good bill. It does what the municipalities want. It gives them home rule. It makes it permanent home rule. We don't have to go back and revisit this every year. It's not a pilot program no longer. It is a permanent bill. So I urge adoption of the strike and insert.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the adoption of the primary amendment? If not, the question before the House is the adoption of the primary amendment. Those in favor of the primary amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Roll call's been demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. Those in favor of the primary amendment will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? The gentleman, the 54th, Doggett Hott. If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 66 ayes, 32 nays, 2 members absent not voting, a majority of members present having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the primary amendment adopted. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 4, relating generally to municipal home rule program.
The question before the House is shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 28th, Doggett Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we've all listened to a variety of debates that's gone on here about this bill as it's been amended. Mr. Speaker, I would urge its passage.
The gentleman, the 32nd, Doggett Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I cannot vote for this bill absent home rule language. Therefore, I will be a no vote.
The gentleman from the 62nd, Doggett Bibby.
Mr. Speaker, I cannot vote for this bill. I intended from the beginning to be able to vote for home rule. This is not home rule. This is an aberration of home rule. It takes the power of the people away with this amendment. It took away the ability to recall. So I'll be a no vote on this vote.
The gentleman, the 18th, Delegate Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Realize that you are representing the 231 cities across the state that the Municipal League represents, and I guarantee your municipalities want this. These are the people you represent, and those are the people who represent or govern the governing body closest to the people. Keep that in mind, that this is power of the people. This is power of the people in their municipalities, especially mine, Barboursville, a very small one. This gives the power to them and not the power to us up here. So please vote in favor of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 10th, Doggett Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come from city government. I spent time on city government before home rule. I spent time on city government after home rule. And I will tell you that those cities in the state of West Virginia that currently are governing under the home rule need this bill passed. They are holding back. They can't do their budgets. They can't do anything right now until we finalize something in this body. I strongly urge passage of this bill. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 60th, Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to vote in favor of this bill today. We didn't get all the freedom that I wanted. We're not getting freedom to the people, but a little bit of freedom to these municipalities would be an improvement. Thank you, sir.
The gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill today for a number of reasons. The first one is that you should look at a West Virginia Supreme Court case, Cooper v. City of Charleston. And I want you to understand what it would mean if we voted this bill down. Cooper v. City of Charleston was about the user fees. The user fees are a fee charged to anyone who works inside the city. That is not contemplated in a home rule bill. So currently, the cities that have home rule right now and have a 1% sales tax pursuant to Article 6, Section 39 of our Constitution, they would end up having to up their user fee. In the case of one of my cities, they would probably have to triple it. Now, user fees, a lot of people say, may be taxation without representation because people end up having to work somewhere and then they're not able to vote in those elections. So the question is, which is better? A 1% voluntary sales tax, which the voters of a city can vote a mayor out, vote city council people out, all that, or be forced to pay $15 a week, $20 a week in their user fee. For all those reasons, I would tell you that because this does not contemplate the user fee in the least, we must pass this bill or your people are going to be taxed significantly more in what is considered a fee rather than a tax. Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, do the gentleman from the 56th or 28th wish to close debate on the bill? The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 87 ayes, 11 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 4.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 153, providing greater flexibility for making infrastructure project grants.
The gentleman from the 14th, Delegate Butler, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill provides that after a recommendation from the West Virginia Infrastructure and Jobs Development Council, the Water Development Authority shall use money in the infrastructure fund to make loans with or without interest, loan guarantees, or grants to provide other assistance to finance all or part of infrastructure projects or projects to be undertaken by a project sponsor. Money dispersed from the fund as grants may not exceed 20% of the total funds available for the funding of projects. The bill amends this section to make 3 changes to the current limitations of use of money in the fund. It increases the maximum amount of money that may be dispersed as grants from 20% to 25% of total funds available for funding of project grants. It provides that if on January 1st of any year the amount available for grants in any congressional district is below $150,000, the council may convert up to 30% of the funds available for loans in that congressional district to be used for grants within the congressional district if and when needed to make an award. And it increases the maximum amount of funding assistance that may be provided to all project sponsors in the aggregate from $100,000 annually to $500,000 annually. Mr. Speaker, we had this bill in technology infrastructure. It provides flexibility to improve our water and sewer projects, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent, not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 153.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will read and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 199, authorizing certain miscellaneous agencies and boards to promulgate legislative rules.
The gentleman, the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 199 is the miscellaneous rules bundle. Hold on to your seat. This bundle contains 32 rules. Due to my advanced age and energy deficit, I'm going to be tag teaming on this bill with my colleague from the 35th. I'll start. But in general, these rules went through the legislative rule-making review process, as well as the Senate Judiciary Committee, the House Committee on Government Organizations, and the House Judiciary Committee. The first rule is from the Athletic Commission. This rule adds a new section which allows promoters to schedule single-night semi-professional boxing or kickboxing events using one of 3 different formats. The amended rule also adds a cruiserweight class, which is 184 to 215 pounds, for semi-professional boxers. It also increases the heavyweight class to those weighing more than 215 pounds. The changes to the weight classes are intended to allow for more equal and fair matches between contestants and increase the safety of participants. From the Department of Agriculture, we had 8 rules, and I'll summarize those rules as follows. The agricultural rules add definitions and clarify that a qualified person may be licensed to grow industrial hemp in the state. In addition, there is a rule that clarifies that the Rural Rehabilitation Committee is established by the Commissioner of Agriculture, as well as providing for the refinancing of existing loans, expanding the use of loans, and adding additional requirements for collateral and the purchase of collateral. One rule among the 8 syncs up language relating to chronic wasting disease with the federal mandated counterpart. There's a new rule that provides an incentive for qualified farmers to donate fresh produce and food that might have otherwise been thrown out or left unharvested. There's also a new rule that implements the Agro-Tourism Responsibility Act that passed during the 2018 regular session. One of the rules establishes the framework for regulation of farmers markets and farmers market vendors, including registration, permitting, inspection, and labeling. This rule also establishes requirements for sampling at farmers markets and set forth procedures for enforcement of hearings. The final rule makes the Department of Agriculture the official seed certification agency in the state for industrial hemp. There's also one rule from the Board of Dietitians. The proposed rule amends a current legislative rule by reducing the reinstatement fee for dietitians from $125 to $50 and by adding a paper license verification fee of $10. From the Board of Medicine, there are 2 rules. One Board of Medicine rule was amended to comply with the passage of a bill during the 2018 regular session, which changed the licensure requirements for medical doctors who completed medical education at an international medical school. The second rule establishes a requirement that all participants in medical residency and fellowships in West Virginia hold a training permit issued by the board. There's also one rule from the Board of Osteopathic Medicine. This rule was amended to comply with the passage of a bill that extended the collection date of the Patient Injury Compensation Fund assessment fee from osteopathic physicians to 2021. Finally, there are 5 rules from the Board of Pharmacy. Several of the pharmacy rules were reorganized without making substantive changes. One rule modifies hours of clinic practice and training to comply with recently released national requirements. One of the rules establishes standards for the substitution of biological pharmaceuticals. Tag, you're it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the chairman. Your next set of rules is one rule coming to you from the Real Estate Appraisal Licensing Board. New educational requirements have been added to certification as a certified residential appraiser. An alternative to a bachelor's degree has been added for a person who has held a licensed residential credential for a minimum of 5 years. The next set of 6 rules deal with the registered professional nurses. The Board of Registered Professional Nurses rules address the accreditation of nursing programs, the criteria of those programs, and the standards of practice for professional accountability. The rules further provide for criminal background checks. Secretary of State has a set of 4 rules. The 4 Secretary of State rules update formatting and filing requirements, propose a new rule regarding grants for HAVA, update a rule regarding satellite precincts, and repeal a rule regarding notaries. The social workers have 2 rules. The 2 social workers rules modify the training, registration, and application requirements for clinical supervisors of individuals seeking to become licensed independent clinical social workers, expands the permissible use of HIPAA-compliant technology, and modifies the Code of Ethics to the most recently adopted code adopted by the National Association of Social Workers. The Treasurer has 1 rule. This new rule implements the provisions of the Unknown and Unlocatable Interest Owners Act concerning wells developed in accordance with the Co-Tenancy Modernization and Majority Protection Act that passed during the 2018 regular session. The rule sets forth reporting, remitting deadlines, and establishes procedures for paying owners when they file a claim. Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from the 27th and I urge passage of this miscellaneous rules bundle.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 10th, Douglas Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the rules that we're talking about today has to do with the State Athletic Commission. And for that reason, I would ask for Rule 49. I am a professional boxing judge licensed by the State Athletic Commission.
Yes, under the facts as the gentleman presented them this morning and yesterday, the gentleman would be a member of a class of greater than 5 and should therefore vote.
And would that ruling also pertain to other items on the agenda today that also pertain to the State Athletic Commission?
The gentleman is not a member of the State Athletic Commission,
No.
correct? If the gentleman is not a member of the State Athletic Commission, it would be the ruling of the chair that on all bills, the member would be a member of a class of greater than 5 and therefore should vote.
Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 88 ayes, 2 nays, 10 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 199.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill take effect from its passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 90 ayes, 1 nay, 9 members absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on 3rd reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 238, increasing certain penalties for passing stopped school bus.
The gentleman from the 27th, Douglas Schott, the gentleman from the 35th, Doug Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This bill concerns the crime of overtaking a stopped school bus. Of course, doing so poses a serious risk to school children embarking and disembarking on the bus, as we can all imagine. The bill aids in the enforcement of this crime by providing that all school buses acquired after July 1st of this year must be equipped with forward-facing and rear-facing cameras. The anticipated expense is $3,500 per newly acquired school bus. It's my understanding that the Senate has provided an allocation in their proposed budget for this expense. Further, this bill increases, first, the fines associated and the period for which your license may be suspended for such a violation. The bill does not increase any period of confinement provided for in the current law. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 25th, Douglas Painter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
once again, I put in a very similar bill to this, and the one comes over from the Senate is a good bill too, so it's long overdue and well needed, so let's support this thing and vote it up.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 90 ayes, 1 nay, 9 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 238.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will read and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 241, permitting county court clerk scan certain documents in electronic form.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the committee substitute for Senate Bill 241. Currently, West Virginia Code requires that county clerks prepare and maintain well-bound books of recorded documents, such as deeds and plats. It also requires that indices of those documents be prepared and maintained. This bill allows the county commission to authorize the county clerk to record documents by scanning them into an electronic format and have those documents made available when financially feasible. Additionally, the bill requires that all electronic documents be stored on an off-site server to retain backup copies. The bill further provides that the county commission may authorize the clerk to scan and replace existing books, but requires that the existing books be retained either on or off-site. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 94 ayes, 0 nays, 6 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 241.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will read and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 317, authorizing 3 or more adjacent counties form multi-county trail network authority.
The gentleman, the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to allow 3 or more adjacent counties to form a multi-county trail authority. The legislature found that there is significant need within the state for managed facilities that provide trail recreation for hiking, biking, and bicycle enthusiasts and others. Permitting counties to establish a trail authority will allow for significant economic and recreational benefits for the state. Additionally, the bill provides rules of operation which include financial review, oversight, powers and authority of the authority, criminal penalties, purchasing and bidding procedures, civil remedies for unlawful purchasing and contracts. The bill also creates the Mountaineer Trail Network Recreation Authority using the same structure as contained in the original bill. Mr. Speaker, I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 21st, Delegate Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield? This only applies to non-motorized transportation, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 94 ayes, 0 nays, 6 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 317.
Are there amendments to the title?
Committee on Government Organization moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 318, transferring Medicaid Fraud Control Unit to Attorney General's Office.
The gentleman, the 27th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill moves the Medicaid Fraud Unit from the Office of the Inspector General to the Attorney General's Office. on October 1st, 2019. Of note, the Office of the Inspector General is under the Department of Health and Human Resources, period. The department currently has approximately 25 employees that will be transferred to the Attorney General's office as at-will employees. The legislative auditor shall conduct a performance audit on or before December 31st of 2022, which shall compare and contrast the performance of the unit in DHHR versus through the Attorney General's office. The Medicaid Fraud Control Unit specifically investigates provider fraud. This is not recipient fraud, but they look into complaints of criminal abuse and neglect in any healthcare facility, as well as allegations of misappropriation of patients' private funds in Medicaid facilities. The unit is also charged with the investigation of fraud in the administration of the Medicaid program. The major purpose of the bill is to separate the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit and the Medicaid program. In other words, taking the fox out of the hen house. Medicaid providers include doctors, physicians, dentists, hospitals, nursing facilities, home and community-based services, pharmacies, clinics, counselors, personal care, or any other individual or company that is paid by the Medicaid program to provide health care services. Now, types of fraud do include things like upcoding, unbundling, billing more than once for the same services. There are 43 Medicaid fraud control units located in the Office of State Attorney General. Now, of note, this bill does not provide the Attorney General with prosecutorial authority, as the statute provides all cases to be referred to for prosecution. However, this does not prevent a county prosecutor from designating an attorney with the Attorney General's office as an assistant prosecutor on a fraud case developed by the office. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 37th, Doug Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill, and I'll try to keep it brief. I disagree with the representation that this somehow removes the fox from the hen house. I believe that what we could wind up with is basically it could be cherry picking one of these fraud investigation units out of the Office of Inspector General and putting it in more of a for lack of better words, more of a high-profile part of state government, one that's headed by a statewide elected official. I believe they've done a good job in the Office of Inspector General. You often don't hear about them. It's generally just state workers who show up every day, keep their head down, and do their job. My fear with this is when we put it in the hands of a statewide elected official, that often after investigations are concluded, we might be seeing a lot of press conferences and a lot of notoriety and maybe too much visibility involved with this important function that has been acting quietly down here in the DHHR where it's been for years. Doesn't make sense to take one fraud unit out and place it over here, just one that might be more of a big ticket item, and move it over into the office of a statewide elected official. So I would oppose that. I would also point out that there was an Office of Consumer Protection Fraud. Well, I guess there still is an office over there, but we don't hear much about it because it was pretty much gutted. That is currently in the Office of the Attorney General. I would hate to see the same thing happen to Medicaid fraud. So I would urge opposition to this bill.
The gentleman from the 62nd, Doug Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak in favor of this bill. I think it's an outstanding bill. My years I spent in the military, federal government. One thing you can't have is you can't have a conflict of interest. You can't have an agency investigating fraud that's also involved in where the activity of the fraud is coming from. In this case here, the Medicaid fraud falls within DHHR. You can't have the same organization doing the investigation. You can't ask for an unbiased investigation when that agency that's responsible for overseeing the program is now also responsible for looking out for fraud. By moving it to the Attorney General's office, it's a good move. You're putting into an unbiased agency, law enforcement agency, that can look at it clearly and not be caught up within their own agency, because there's no internal axe to grind. It's totally unbiased. You're not going to be having people that are a little bit concerned because it's in their particular organization that they may not want to investigate as thoroughly. So I would urge everyone to support this bill. It's a good bill. It'll help clean up Medicaid fraud, and it'll be good for the taxpayers of West Virginia and also the taxpayers of America who give their hard-earned tax dollars for Medicaid. So I would urge everyone to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 55th, Douglas Spinagle.
I'm opposed to this bill, and frankly, I had a conversation with Attorney General going in this with open mind before I even passed the vote and listened to testimony up in committee. And I don't understand. I think there's some confusion in here. Medicaid is paid as an insurance for services, and there's abuse with pharmacists, there's abuse with doctors, there's abuse with nursing homes. That's parked in DHHR along with a bunch of other agencies. So we have this one government silo, and I heard here just a couple days ago there was an argument that we got to quit moving things all throughout these agencies and these agency heads and spreading them all over because of efficiency. We strive for efficiency in government, or at least I do, not create more bureaucracy, more red tape, which is what this bill's doing. Now, I listened to it in committee, and the Medicaid fraud unit is ranked 7th in the United States. 7th. And the problem is, when we are paying these checks on Medicaid, they see the problems with these people that are abusing it, and they just go across the hallway and contact, hey, you might want to do an investigation here. There's fraud we believe to be fraud, and they launch an investigation. Well, in committee, what was advised is you're going to lose a lot of fraud cases, because now if you get moved over to the Attorney General's office, Medicaid, when they think there's an issue, they're going to have to contact the Secretary head. Secretary head's going to have to go over to Attorney General, and then it's going to have to go down to the Medicaid fraud. Bouncing across agencies. That's not efficient. They're doing a good job, and on top of that, these employees are going to lose civil service protection because we're wanting to put more red tape in and make greater bureaucracy in government. So I truly listened to this. I gave it an honest opinion. I was going to listen to it in committee. I told the Attorney General I would do that because I'm often a critic of his. But just listening to it, and I'm not saying what he's wanting to do is wrong or anything like that. He's wanting to get involved in it. But it's working fine now. It's working really good, and we're excelling. So I don't know why we want to sit there and jumble government agencies and create more bureaucracy, more red tape when things are working good right now. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote no.
The gentleman from the 60th, Douglas Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The basic idea behind an IG is that they have to be free and independent. Currently, this inspection unit is funded through the department that they're supposed to be inspecting. They are also under the organizational structure of that department. They're not independent. They can't do the full job they're supposed to do. It only makes sense to move it over to a free and independent situation so that they can inspect the entire process all the way through. Please support this bill. Thank you, sir.
The gentleman from the 36th, Doggett Road.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I speak in opposition to the bill. There were two things that were very apparent in the committee. One was that this agency is doing a very, very good job. The ranking of 7th, I don't know when West Virginia gets a ranking of 7th, and what that was related to was the number of resources for the dollars recovery. 7th in the country in terms of efficiency in the use of resources for the recovery against providers. Now, people are talking about this as an investigation of the agency. The agency provides the information. The agency's under the rules of the federal government. The prosecution is against providers, not consumers. It's against providers who are cheating the Medicaid system. And they've had great success in getting both settlements and working in circuit court as prosecutors. And what's unique, not just unique to West Virginia, but it's one of the qualities that is one of the hallmarks of our constitutional system, is that prosecution is at the local level. And you say, but this is a state agency, Larry. Well, yes, but they become assistant prosecutors to assist in the prosecution by the local prosecutors of the people who've been committing fraud. Now, what we're changing in this bill is we are changing the concept that has been a constitutional principle since we became a state, and that is that we don't have state prosecutors. We don't have state prosecutors. We are creating that in this bill. We're creating a state prosecution unit where there has not been one before. Now, you might hear that there are a number of states that have the state attorney general handle these units, but those are in states where the attorney generals already have prosecutorial authority on a statewide basis. We don't do that. We send it through the prosecutors, the local prosecutors. We should leave this system that's working very well in place and should not create a new state prosecutorial system in the Attorney General's office. I urge the members to vote against the bill.
The lady from the 51st, Dr. Fleischauer.
Thank you. I also oppose the bill, but I want to remark or just talk a little bit about this idea that somehow it's going to be better being in a different agency. Right now, they have a statutory firewall within DHHR, which means that the people in the Inspector General's office do not talk to the people in the Medicaid waiver office. They have firewalls within the Attorney General's office as well. This is a routine thing that you have to set up statutorily. For example, the Civil Rights Division, when they find probable cause because of discrimination, they represent individuals who feel they've been discriminated against. And the Attorney General is by statute bound to do that. The Attorney General also defends agencies when they've been accused of discrimination, and they have to have a special process set up, and that happens anytime when, like in consumer protection, if they're it's something that they do all the time. They have these firewalls already within the AG's office. This just means that you're adding more bureaucracy, like the gentleman said. So it's not something that's necessary. It's not something that's different from federal law. Why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
The gentleman from 36, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to discuss it, just say a few things about this bill. We had this bill twice in Health Committee. And following the lead of our majority leader, I just want to point out that this is a bipartisan bill. A lot of both sides came together on this bill. It was bipartisan and opposition. This bill passed by one vote both times we dealt with it in health, and it very narrowly made it out of committee both times. Like I said, there's bipartisan opposition to this bill, and following the lead of the majority leader, I'm going to stick to bipartisanship and vote against this bill. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 60th, Douglas Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me a second shot at this. The statutory firewall. Yes, there is a statute that says that these agencies must be separated. There's a statute. Does that necessarily mean that we are complying with that statute? In reality, what you've got is people who are down the hall from each other, people who sit in the lunchroom with each other, who are investigating each other. What we have instead of a firewall is a cubicle divider. What we need is a wall. Let's go ahead, move it over to the AG's office, and build that wall. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 37th, Douglas Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 60th yield?
Does the gentleman from the 60th yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll keep this short, but you mentioned that these folks are down the hall from who they're investigating. Is that what you just said?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Figuratively speaking.
So they're down the
They're in
hall
the
from
same
healthcare
department.
providers?
I'm sorry, what's
because
that?
They investigate the healthcare providers.
Yes, they also investigate the process. So if there is any malfeasance within our government, within DHHR, the people that they're investigating who might be conducting that malfeasance are down the hall from them.
Do you have any
figuratively speaking.
specific examples of malfeasance that you're
No, I
aware
don't
of? Or why
particularly
we're,
have
what's
any.
that?
I don't particularly have any, but that's not the point. The point is if you're going to investigate, an organization, you need to be outside that organization, not funded by that organization and under the same organizational system that they're under.
Okay, well, I thought it was mainly to investigate the healthcare providers, since that's where most Medicaid fraud is with the providers when it occurs. But well, thank you for asking.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, gentlemen, proceed.
Just briefly, as I understand it, the Medicaid fraud unit mainly investigates the providers. They are not located in the DHHR. They are not investigating themselves, and I've heard absolutely no evidence of any kind of malfeasance or a problem, so I'm not exactly sure what we're trying to solve here, except moving what I would call a big-ticket item into the hands of a statewide elected official who sometimes seeks notoriety.
The gentleman with 66, Douglas Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, we've heard some discussion that, why change things at this point? You know, things are working just fine. I've heard some indications that actually that our current fraud unit is actually performing well. Well, here's how we stack up compared to other states. From 2010 to 2017, West Virginia recovered $7.80 less per Medicaid enrollee than the average state. That's $7.80 per enrollee than the average state. In 2017, we recovered $10.22 per enrollee, while the national average was $24.42, more than double. With over 550,000 enrollees, West Virginia missed out on more than $8 million in a single year by performing below the national average. In 2011, the state Medicaid fraud control unit recovered $38.17 per enrollee versus $10.22 in 2017. So we're actually moving in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, the national trend of improper payments has increased from $19.2 billion in 2012 to $36.2 billion in 2018. So nationally, while improper payments are almost doubling, we're going in the wrong direction as far as what we're actually collecting. And keep in mind, for every dollar that's being used in a fraudulent manner, those are dollars that aren't available for the truly needy. And so, again, we need to reverse this trend and get serious about what we're doing with fraud. Currently, and we heard this testimony in House Finance, 42 states have their Medicaid fraud control unit operating under their Attorney General. And, we heard testimony that's working well in other states, and I would certainly submit that we need to, take a similar approach. One of the things that, that I've heard in my discussions on this issue is that having our Attorney General be responsible for this function allows him and his office to work very closely with the National Association of Attorney Generals. And that's shown to be a very strong benefit in aggressively attacking Medicaid fraud. I will note that the Attorney General's office is already responsible for investigating disability fraud, and it has established a record of rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse. In just over 3 years since its inception, the Social Security Disability Fraud Unit in the Attorney General's office has saved over $14 million. So, again, I think the Attorney General's office has shown progress in rooting out fraud, just as other Attorney Generals across the country have done so. I'd urge passage of the bill.
The gentleman from the 16th, Doug Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the House Finance Committee, I also got to listen to the presentations of folks from the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. And I'd like to echo the comments of the Majority Leader, or rather the Majority Whip there. Over the last 3 years, our trend has been opposite of the national average. And not only that, but we are constantly performing at 1/2 as well as what the national average is. The percentage of expenditures recovered in 2017 were 0.14% compared to the United States being 0.3%. What that tells you is that it is broke. It is broke. So let's think about this. In 2007, the Performance Evaluation and Research Division found in an audit a huge number of deficiencies with the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. They then did a follow-up in 2013. and found that many of the recommendations that they had put in place were still not compliant. The Office of the Inspector General found that there were a huge number of things that made them not compliant. And I don't have to even rehash all of those, but to say that it isn't broke is simply not accurate. Now let's look at one last thing that really told me everything that I needed to know when I was sitting in the Finance Committee. And that was the last bit of testimony that we heard from the gentleman who's the head of the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was essentially that he could request more money from the Office of the Inspector General to have more investigators, and had not done it. Free money from the feds, guys, and had not done it to do better at this job. It is broke. Let's fix it. Give it to the Attorney General and give it to the people that prosecute people all the time. Thank you.
The gentleman number 36, Doug Robinson.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman from the 66th yield?
Happy to take the floor and yield.
Delegate, how'd you come up with your numbers there? You claim that we're going the wrong direction. How'd you derive that those statistics?
These are readily available. These are public information numbers. Again, the numbers that I referenced was that in 2011, the state Medicaid fraud control unit recovered $38.17 per enrollee versus $10.22 in 2017. Those are readily available, public available numbers.
But you made a statement from 2011 to 2017 that we were going in the wrong direction. Did you do some math, or did you do some studying on those public available documents, or did somebody
Absolutely,
give you
yeah.
that?
2010 to 17, we recovered $7.80 per Medicaid enrollee. That's less than the average state. Again, readily available through public documents. In 2017, we recovered $10.22 per enrollee. The national average was $24.42. So I think those numbers clearly indicate we're not performing as well as other states are in rooting out fraud, which again, I think clearly results in dollars not being available for the truly needy.
I think that's interesting what you've done there, because you picked a year, right? What year did you just tell me?
2011, the first numbers I had were 2011 through 2017. Those are the most recent numbers that I had available. And the others were 2010 to 2017. I get a sense that some folks are wanting to point to 1 year and saying, oh my goodness, everything's working well now. I'm looking at basically a 6-7 year track record that demonstrates that we're underperforming other states by a considerable margin.
Yeah, we had a similar conversation with the Attorney General when he testified in Health Committee. And what he didn't point out was that these numbers jump when there's a settlement made. So numbers go from maybe $2 on average for the year up to $45 per year. So when you misrepresent the statistics like that, we can say that we're below the average, but numbers are jumping. It's not a straight line item. And the Attorney General made the same accusations and said we're not up to the national par. But what's happening is you're manipulating statistics. You're using 11 to 17 and saying, well, we're not up to par. But 1 year's $45 per dollar, and the next year's $7 because we don't have a settlement in that year. Is that correct?
All I'm pointing out is that from over a considerable time frame, I'm sharing with you where the numbers are, what the recoveries are. I think what's definitely not in dispute is what we've seen since with the disability fraud unit being under the Attorney General now. I don't think there's any dispute that he saved the state over $14 million. So I think there's adequate evidence that the Attorney General can handle a fraud unit effectively. And again, I'm simply suggesting that we follow the lead of 42 other states across the country that have their fraud unit under their Attorney General. And again, I think it comes down to a policy question. Do you want to continue down the path that we are now, or do we want to get serious about rooting out fraud and put our fraud unit under our Attorney General, as 42 other states across the United States do?
I understand how you want to continue and make your point, but
That's right.
Are you done? The problem is that you've misrepresented statistics, that you've come in here and tried to tell us that old state average like that, but it's not a straight line number. It's the same thing the Attorney General tried to do in committee, and he narrowly made it out of there and then went up to finance and forced it out. So do you want to tell the truth 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, or are you going to continue talking about a straight line item?
If you want to present numbers that make your case, have at it. I think the numbers clearly indicate that our fraud unit, despite the best efforts of those staff members, it's just not delivering the results that other states or across the country. Again, these are compared to other states' recoveries. So you can pick out any particular year. I'll grant you that. But the bottom line is our return on investment is not matching up to other states across the country. Clearly, we're an outlier here. I'm suggesting that we join 42 other states across the country, getting serious about Medicaid fraud so that we can ensure that every dollar that we appropriate is going to the truly needy.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Speak to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman, may proceed.
I think what we're hearing, the problem with the way our process works is in committee we get to ask questions of experts, and they give us information. They give us hard numbers. On the floor, we hear somebody's interpretation, and usually skewed and biased. And when we're talking about statistics, what happens is we get to take numbers and pick the ones we want, add them up, and average them. And say, you know, on average, we don't match up with the national average. So, you know, we must be doing something wrong. We should hand it off to the AG. The problem is, in reality, these numbers go from $2, $3 a year, all the way up to $30 or $40 a year. So we can say and argue and skew our statistics here on the floor and try to paint it that direction, or we can look at the reality and look at what's happening here, and we're taking one little piece of the Inspector General at DHHR and taking it over and setting it at the AG because it's going to get him a little TV time, okay? So let's vote this down, get it over with. We already tried twice in committee. Let's get rid of this bill. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 16th, Doug at Linville.
Majority whip, with the majority whip yield.
All
right, I assume that you've got some of the same data that I have. In 2015, did West Virginia recover $5.65 per enrollee?
I'm sorry, what year is that?
2015.
2015. I don't have it. I don't have it broken down year by year, so you may have some information I'm not aware of.
Okay. Sir, did you hear the same thing that I did, that in committee that there were Performance Evaluation Research Division audits which plainly stated that in 2007 that our Medicaid fraud control unit was deficient in a number of areas?
Yes, I did. I think there was a specific reference to a legislative audit that had been performed, and again, I certainly don't want to suggest that those individuals in the Medicaid fraud audit aren't trying to do their very best, but I think it's I think if you look what other states are doing, I think if you look at the documented performance of the disability fraud unit of the Attorney General, I think it's a reasonable approach to let's do something different, similar to what other states have done, and I think we can turn those numbers around.
How many other states did you say utilize their Attorney General for the Medicaid fraud control unit?
The information I have is 43. I think the testimony we heard in committee was 42, so we'll go
we're
42.
an outlier.
Clearly.
And we're an outlier that's underperforming, right? So it's not like we're an outlier and we're doing a whole lot better than everybody else on a per enrollee basis on average. Per the data that you've got and the data that I've got, it plainly shows that we're significantly underperforming. In fact, in most cases, less than 50%. And actually what I have here is that in 2016, we were down at about 1/3 of the average per enrollee recoveries all across the country. So would you say that while we're certainly an outlier, we're doing things differently, but we're definitely not doing them differently and better?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Numbers that I have here, and as you look at a percentage of expenditures recovered, you had asked about 2015. West Virginia, 0.06%. United States as a whole, 0.14%. So again, definitely an outlier there. I think you had asked about the amount of money spent per population in 2015. I'm not sure if you had asked about that, but a little over $2,000 compared to the United States of a little over about $1,700.
All right, thanks, sir. Just to finish speaking here, folks, over the last 3 years, just the last 3 years, if we just would have been average at the national rate, even though we have a greater percentage of our population on Medicaid than the country as a whole on average, we would have had an additional $20 million recovered. $20 million if we were just average. The Founding Fathers envisioned a number of states who could experiment, try different things, and when they did that, other states could learn from either the successes or the mistakes of other states. We should learn from our own mistakes. Right here it is. We're one of 8 states that doesn't handle it this way, and we're severely underperforming. For goodness sakes, folks, look at what 42 other states are doing better than we are, and do it that way. Thank you.
The gentleman from 30th, Delegate Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from Mercer yield for a question?
Yes, gentleman does yield.
I just want to be sure and that if this bill passes or fails, it's not going to interfere with the state's relationship with the National Association of Medicaid Fraud Control Units.
It should not affect that.
Okay, so irrespective of how this vote goes, we're still going to be good with NAMFUCU.
I would expect so, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from 36, Delegate Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that we do need to sort through the statistical information that's been provided. The audit that was discussed earlier was done in 2013, 5 years ago. The people who are in place now are not the folks who were in place 5 years ago. What's important is that the numbers that have been cited refer to the number of recipients, the per recipient recovery, when West Virginia is a small state compared to most every other state that we're being compared to. What's important is that the efficiency rate is not challenged. The cost that we put into the system, we are 7th in the country in recovery. Now, it was mentioned that perhaps we should be hiring a legion of investigators to go after everybody in the state, but again, this is only against providers. If our providers are honest, we're going to have a real low rate on recovery when you go per recipient. So I think that it's important to compare apples and apples and oranges on this. They are 7th in the country, being the most efficient Medicaid fraud unit, at number 7 for the number of resources provided and the amount of money recovered. Now, that's a fair evaluation. It is not broken. The attorney generals, the other states that have state prosecutorial attorney generals have Medicaid fraud units in those agencies, and perhaps they should. We don't have that system here. We use local prosecutors, and we always have and we always should. This Medicaid fraud unit actually participates and assists the local prosecutors in prosecuting fraud. And that's an appropriate role. I should also point out that please understand that they do not have the ability to hire attorneys to bring the civil cases, but the Attorney General, under the bill, will have the authority to hire out all this work to private attorneys. And that has been a difficulty in the past with private attorneys handling all of those cases. So I point out that this is not a broken system. The agency we have works very well. They work very hard, and they made a very strong presentation in the Finance Committee, and I'd urge the members to vote against the bill.
The gentleman from the 55th, Douglas Spinagle.
Look, I'm not going to get up here and jump up and down, but I do take a little bit of offense to this Medicaid fraud unit being run down the ground. We are 7th in the country. So maybe these 43 other states ought to look how West Virginia handles things, because we're 7th. Just because every other state does it, we're excelling at this. And then we are a population of 1.8 million people. And then we're getting statistics tossed out here of California of 39 million people, New York of X amount of millions of people. They're holding their own, and they're doing a good job, and they're running it efficiently, and we're getting a good return on money. And if you want to create additional government bureaucracy and do the good old boy system of kicking it to one of our political buddies to run it, then so be it. But don't run this unit down because they're doing a good job in the United States. And if you just want to kick it over to the AG because he's one of your alls and it's, pat each other on the back, fine. But they're doing a good job and quit running them down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the bill before the jump from the 51st? Delegate Piles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield?
Yes, Chairman does yield.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know how many employees are going to be involved in this transfer from health to the Attorney General's office?
Yes, currently they have 25 employees.
25
that doesn't mean
employees.
they wouldn't add more, but they have 25.
And I understood you to say that they would become at-will employees when they're transferred to the Attorney General's office?
Transferred over to Attorney General, those positions would be at-will positions, yes.
So the Attorney General would be able to replace all 25 employees if he wished to?
If that was the case, yes, the Attorney General could. Of course, those 25 employees don't have to go with that. They could go to some lateral position in DHHR if they want to do that, but those positions would move to the Attorney General and would be filled by the Attorney General. And it's expected it would be those 25 employees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speak to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman may proceed.
I'm going to oppose this bill, basically for some of the other reasons that have been cited, such as the misinformation on the audit conducted in 2013, and also the other information pointed out by the gentleman from the 35th and the 55th that West Virginia is 7th in the nation in the rate of return on investment per staff, and 12th in the nation on the return of investment per dollar spent. So it seems to me like there's no underperformance at all in the current arrangement, and I will be voting against the bill, but mainly to protect the jobs of 25 public employees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill before the chair recognizes the gentleman to close debate? If not, the gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Ellington, is recognized to close debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does takes the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit that is under the purview of the Inspector General, which for those of you that don't remember, the Inspector General is under the Department of Health and Human Resources, and moving the unit over to the Attorney General, which will be separate. Now, several years ago, the past few years, we looked at how big Medicaid was, DHHR was, and looking at moving the Inspector General out from under that when we were looking at reorganizing DHHR. And the purpose of that was to keep the investigatory process separate from the divisions. That was what we were trying to achieve. This does one part of that by taking the Medicaid fraud unit out from under DHHR's purview that Medicaid is involved with and keeping them as separate units. Now, majority of things that the Medicaid fraud unit does is look at abuses and neglect for cases of providers that bill inappropriately, and they recover monies from that. Both units, DHHR and the Attorney General, have fraud units, so they both are doing things similar to this. DHHR has 2 fraud units that cover TANF and food stamps and the Medicaid fraud unit. The Attorney General has the disability fraud unit and antitrust investigations, so they're also well equipped to do these things. The 2013 PERD report was mentioned, and that suggested, I'm not going to go into all the data on that, but there were significant delays in time that cases were brought. There were a number of cases that were left on the table, and that may be due to a staffing or the appropriateness of that unit to be able to function. We did hear testimony, however, in both committees that the unit was functioning fairly well. There's no dispute there. They also brought in millions of dollars over the years. As you heard other reports here, there may be a dispute as far as how much monies may be left on the table. There may not be much, there may be a lot. And I'm not suggesting that they are not working efficiently in that unit, and I'm certainly not suggesting that they're not working ethically within that unit with regard to the Medicaid program. However, the audit did suggest that by moving the fraud unit to the Attorney General would also increase state revenues by leveraging the relationships with the other 43 Attorney General's offices. And it could also reduce the cost to the unit by utilizing the latest technology and data mining resources. So there are significant issues there that might help the state by moving that out. Of course, this bill suggests that the auditor would, over the next 3 years, look at the performance of the Attorney General, if that's what we choose. And they would look at that performance and compare it to the prior performance in DHHR. So we do have a control mechanism there to look and see if this is working better or not. The other part of what the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit is supposed to do is not only look at the providers, but it's supposed to investigate the fraud in the administration of the Medicaid program. I said the administration of the program. And that is where I see the biggest value to this, by separating the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit out of the Inspector General's office to the Attorney General, rather than keeping it under the purview of DHHR, where Medicaid is the big bear in the room there. That is probably the largest thing that this bill would achieve. The Attorney General also would have other resources available. It may be a staffing issue. We may have to improve how many staff. They may have to get more. But these other states are doing this. That's not a reason for us to do it, but there is success in those other states. Whether we're 7th this year in the current unit versus what it was before, it's good that they're getting up there, and I appreciate that, and I congratulate them for it. But there may be a lot of room for improvement. So therefore, based on those reasons, I would suggest passage of this bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 58 ayes, 42 nays, 0 members absent, not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 318.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. For what purpose does the gentleman from the 35th, Douglas Byrd, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would it be appropriate to make a motion to make this effective July 1, 2021?
It would. The gentleman from the 35th moves that the bill be made effective July 1st, 2021. A roll call has been demanded. It takes a 2/3 vote. Roll call is automatic. The question for the House is the motion by the gentleman from the 35th that the bill be made effective July 1st, 2021. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result of this question. There are 40 ayes, 59 nays, 1 member absent, not voting. Less than 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the motion lost. The lady from the 49th.
I have a different motion. I'd like to move that the bill take effect October 1st, 2019.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective October 1st, 2019. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 73 ayes, 23 nays, 4 members absent, not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill effective October 1st, 2019. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 357, relating generally to Division of Administrative Services.
The gentleman from the 28th, Douglas Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is committee substitute for Senate Bill 357. The purpose of this bill is to consolidate the functions of the Division of Justice and Community Services with the Division of Administrative Services within the Department of Military Affairs and Public Safety. If you recall, last year we passed House Bill 4338, which created the Department of Military Affairs and Public Safety, the Division of Administrative Services, with the specific charge to perform administrative services for identified agencies and divisions within DMAPs. The administrative services and the employees who perform them for the Division of Juvenile Services, the Regional Jail and Correctional Facility Authority, and the Division of Corrections were transferred to the Division of Administrative Services. This bill continues the process started last year by consolidating the administrative functions of the Division of Justice and Community Services within the Division of Administrative Services. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 93 ayes, 0 nays, 7 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 357.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be in the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 400, allowing Board of Dentistry create specialty licenses.
The gentleman from the 28th Delegate Pack to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 400 codifies that specialty license categories used in modern dentistry. The bill changes the clinical exam requirements an applicant must pass from a clinical exam administered by the board to a clinical exam administered by the Commission on Dental Competency Assessments, the Central Regional Dental Testing Service, the Council of Interstate Testing Agencies, the Southern Regional Testing Agency, or the Western Regional Examining Board. The bill provides that the board may consider clinical examinations prior to July 1, 2019, or individual state clinical examinations which demonstrates competency. And the bill provides flexibility to licensees who apply for recognition in a specialty and clarifies that the applicant for a specialty license apply, pay the applicable fee, and comply with the applicable provisions of the article for each specialty. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 400.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be in the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 402, authorizing Division of Forestry investigate and enforce timber theft violations.
The gentleman from the 28th Delegate Pack to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the committee substitute for Senate Bill 402. The purpose of this bill is to authorize the Division of Forestry to investigate and enforce timber theft violation on all lands. Any person who knowingly and intentionally cuts down, injures, removes, or destroys without the permission of the owner or his or her agent timber of a value of $2,500 or less is guilty of a misdemeanor and, upon conviction, shall be fined no more than $2,500 or jailed for no more than 30 days or both fined and jailed. The bill clarifies that any second or subsequent violation within 10 years of the first violation shall be a felony. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 99 ayes, 0 nays, 1 member absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 402.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be in the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 404, relating generally to sediment control during commercial timber harvesting operations.
The gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By way of background, the Logging Sediment Control Act imposes various regulations on commercial timber harvesting in the state for the purposes of controlling the exposure and erosion of soil. Senate Bill 404 makes the following changes to the existing act. First, it increases the value of timber that a person may remove without a timbering operations license from $15,528 annually to $52,000 annually. It also increases required notice time prior to conducting timber operations and increases mandatory education hours required for certified loggers. The bill provides additional rights to appeal for parties adversely affected by violation orders and increases penalties for a second and third violation, including up to 30 days in jail for a third offense. And finally, it permits certain forestry employees authorized by the director to arrest an individual who commits a third offense. That's a summary of this bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 3 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 404.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be to bring the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 405, increasing limit on additional expenses incurred in preparing notice list for redemption.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to replace the current maximum amount of expenses recovered by a purchaser from $300 to $500. Where a purchaser of a tax sale hires an attorney or incurs other expenses for title preparation and notice of redemption upon certification to the state auditor's office, the purchaser can recoup up to $500 should the property be redeemed. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 5 nays, 0 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 405.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will be in to bring the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 421, relating to annual legislative review of economic development tax credit.
The gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Linville, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to add reporting requirements to the annual report by the Development Office that is due to the Joint Commission on Economic Development. The new requirements would include the identity of each eligible company, whether the company is claiming the Development Project Credit or the Development Expansion Project Credit, or both. Also, a description will be required for the project and information regarding whether the project is a certified multiple-year project. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 99 ayes, 1 nay, 0 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 421.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will be in to bring the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. For what purpose does the gentleman from the 10th, Kelly, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was out of my seat for the vote on Senate Bill 404. I'd like for the record to reflect that I would have voted in the affirmative.
Gentleman's preference will be noted. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 485, clarify notification requirements for property insurance purposes.
The gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 485 relates to notification requirements for property insurance. The bill moves notice provisions from Section 1 of the code to a different section of the code, and it adds language that requires a notice of the intention to renew a property insurance policy with a new policy that includes changes. Currently, insurers must provide a notice of non-renewal if the insurer plans to make changes to a property insurance policy when a policy is up for renewal. This bill will permit an insurer to provide a notice of the intention to renew instead of the intention not to renew. The notice must be accompanied by an explanation of the changes made by the insurer, and the insured will then have the ability to determine whether he or she wishes to renew the policy with the changes or find a new carrier. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 2 nays, 0 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 485.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be in to bring the title of the bill. The lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill take effect from its passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 100 ayes, 0 nays, 0 members absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the acts to the House, to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 487 relating to admissibility of healthcare staffing requirements in litigation.
The gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We discussed this bill quite in length yesterday on second reading. The purpose is, in an action involving allegations of medical professional liability, certain evidentiary presumptions are created. The bill basically addresses two types of the evidentiary presumptions related to the question of appropriate or adequate healthcare facility staffing. And as we discussed yesterday, we talked about a rebuttable presumption and a conclusive presumption. What the bill does is it provides that if a healthcare provider demonstrates compliance with the minimum staffing requirements under state law, there's a conclusive presumption it has established appropriate healthcare staffing was provided. If the healthcare provider complied with the minimum staffing requirements, then a rebuttable presumption is created that adequate supervision of patients to prevent accidents was provided. As you will recall, as we went through the discussions yesterday, the Committee on the Judiciary changed that slightly to provide if the healthcare provider or facility is required to demonstrate compliance with both state and federal staffing requirements in order to activate the conclusive presumption. On the other side of the equation, if the staff is less than the requirements of applicable regulations, a rebuttable presumption arises that the patient care was inadequate and that inadequate supervision was a contributing cause of a patient's fall and injuries or death resulting therefrom. That's a summary of the bill. Mr. Speaker, I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 69 ayes, 31 nays, 0 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 487.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the title.
Question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the acts to the House, to the Senate, and request concurrence therein. For what purpose does the gentleman from the 51st, Delegate Powell, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was away from my desk, out of the chamber for the vote on Senate Bill 357, roll call 522, and if I had been in the chamber, I would have voted in the affirmative. Thank you.
The gentleman's preference will be noted. For what purpose does the gentleman from the 34th, Delegate Boggs, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Had I been in the chamber on roll calls number 514, 515, 516, 517, I would have voted in the affirmative. And also yesterday on roll call 484 on Senate Bill 1, I would have voted in the affirmative.
Gentleman's preferences will be noted. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 493, correcting terminology referring to racing vehicles illegally on street.
The gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill amends West Virginia Code Section 17C-6-8, which makes it unlawful to race motor vehicles on public streets. The bill simply changes the term drag racing to illegal street racing. Drag racing, that term only appears once in West Virginia Code in the section that we're proposing to change. The need for this bill is due to the fact that drag racing is a legitimate sport, whereas street racing is illegal. The National Hot Rod Association, sometimes referred to as the NHRA, is a drag racing governing body which sets rules in drag racing and hosts events and has requested this change. Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? The gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito. If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 90 ayes, 9 nays, 1 member absent, not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 493.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House and the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 496, transferring authority to regulate milk from DHHR to Department of Agriculture.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 496. This bill transfers the authority to regulate milk from the Department of Health and Human Resources to the Department of Agriculture. In 2018, the legislature created the Joint Task Force on Milk Rules and Regulations in response to concerns about the current regulation of the dairy industry in West Virginia. The task force concluded that it is in the best interest of the state to transfer some or all of the authority to regulate milk and milk products from the Department of Health and Human Resources to the Department of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Chris.
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman does yield.
In the transferring of this department or these regulations to Department of Agriculture, are you also transferring funds to do that from HHR?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Linville.
Mr. Speaker, I actually toured the facility where this testing is actually going on in Guthrie. It turns out DHHR currently is actually contracting with the Department of Agriculture to do this. It's a ridiculous waste of time and money, and I support this bill.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 4 nays, 0 members absent, not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 496.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from its passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 4 nays, 0 members absent, not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 511, creating alternating wine proprietorships.
The gentleman from the 66th, Delegate Espinoza, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to permit farm wineries and wineries to enter into alternating wine proprietorships. clarifies that wineries or farm wineries may conduct festivals on the premises or attend festivals off premises, provides samples or tastings, permits Division II and III colleges or universities to have stadium wine sales, authorizes curbside web-based purchases of wine at grocery stores and wine deliveries by specialty shops. If this bill sounds familiar, it's similar to House Bill 3102 that passed this body 94-5 back on February 26th. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman from the 46th, Doggett Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Certainly.
Just reading in the bill, it says that no more than 25% of the products can come from out of state. What is that current limit now?
Just a moment. Council advises me that she believes that's current law. It's 25% currently. This just makes it consistent throughout that portion of the code.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 93 ayes, 7 nays, 0 members absent, not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 511.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and read the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 529. Clarified provisions of Non-Intoxicating Beer Act.
The gentleman from the 66, Douglas Espinoza, to explain the bill.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. This bill will revise certain sections of the Non-Intoxicating Beer Act by allowing floor plan extensions for existing licensees that are in good standing to utilize extra space for a one-day extension, removing growler restrictions, establishing an annual fee for a license to sell growlers, providing for a 30-day requirement to issue or deny a license, and permitting a web-based curbside purchases. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman from the 32nd, Douglas Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we're on a run again for more booze bills. And I don't find that very amusing. Why in the world is it necessary to increase the alcohol limit in beer, non-intoxicating beer? We're increasing it from 9 6/10% to 11.9%. Why is it necessary to increase non-intoxicating craft beer from 12% to 15%? Unless you just want to get people drunk quicker. Think of your college students drinking the bill that we just passed for the smaller colleges now, to allow them to get drunk quicker, to be more close to alcohol poisoning. We are in this bill increasing sales of growlers, filled growlers, from 64 ounces to 128 ounces. Complimentary samples are now going to be extended to much greater areas. We are now in this bill going to allow for curbside delivery in a parking lot of alcohol. We are now going to allow for alcohol to be served at fundraising charitable events with the increased alcohol content in the, quote, non-intoxicating beer. And it's quite interesting that the bill specifically provides that the commissioner can waive the rule requirement for these fundraising events. And so for those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, I would urge a no vote on this bill. We have as a legislature have done so much to advance the cause of alcohol, and it just continues expeditiously. And so let's draw the line here and let's stop it on this one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Believe it or not, I actually share a lot of the same views as the gentleman from the 32nd. I do not drink. I do not choose to drink. I don't really like to be around it. I don't condone it. I don't recommend anybody in here have a drink. I actually believe it, in my belief, I believe it's poison. However, I would support the bill, and to answer the questions, the many questions that were asked of why we're doing this, I'll give you a one-word answer, and that's freedom.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Does the gentleman from the 66 wish to close debate on the bill?
Just briefly.
Yes, gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to respond to a couple of the points made by my distinguished colleague, the change of the alcohol by volume rate from 12 to 15%, it's my understanding that's primarily to address the inconsistency in our ABV regulations, our caps, with out-of-state manufacturers, particularly in the craft beer industry, which has been, very popular. It's been obviously a considerable expansion of the craft beer industry in West Virginia. It's simply to allow out-of-state manufacturers to sell their products here. So that's really the point there. The curbside feature that you mentioned, some of you may be familiar with the Kroger Click List, where you can basically go online, order your items. This basically provides a convenience similar to other states. Still the same requirements as far as the legal ages at which you can purchase those items. It's just a matter of customer convenience. Allows individuals that are using that curbside checklist type of a program to be able to do that with their alcohol purchases as well. That's actually similar to the alternate wine proprietorship provision that we just passed just a few moments ago. And as far as the charitable non-intoxicating beer events, those are one-day events. These are charitable events, one-day events, and again, I think that's a reasonable accommodation or ability for the commissioner to act, as he sees fit on those events. Mr. Speaker, urge passage of the bill.
For what purpose does the gentleman from the 45th, Delegate Martin, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to request Rule 49. I operate a Class A license.
As the holder of a license affected by this bill, the gentleman would be a member of a class of greater than 5 individuals and therefore is directed to vote. The question for the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 84 ayes, 16 nays, 0 members absent, not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 529.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will begin to bring the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 537, creating work group to review hospice needs standards.
The gentleman of 37th, Delegate, or for 27th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill directs the West Virginia Health Care Authority to form a working group to review hospice services in West Virginia. The work group will assist in the creation of the Hospice Certificate of Need standards. Hospice and home health service standards would be currently frozen until December 31st of this year, pending evaluation. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 537.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 566, relating to compensation for state athletic commission members.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 566 allows for members of the State Athletic Commission to receive compensation for attending official meetings, but not to exceed the amount paid to members of the legislature for their interim duties. The bill allows for travel compensation only on days duties are performed or the day of the official meeting. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close them. The gentleman from the 56th, Delegate Howe. The clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 1 nay, 3 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 566.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 596, adjusting voluntary contribution amounts on certain DMV forms.
The gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Chris, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and still good morning. The original Senate bill amends and reacts to Section 17A-2-12A of the Code of West Virginia related to including voluntary donations to the Department of Veterans Assistance on forms created by the Division of Motor Vehicles. The bill raises the minimum level of contribution to $5 and allows for the applicant to choose an amount greater than the current amount, $10 max. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 596.
Are there amendments to the title?
Committee on Finance moves to amend the title.
Question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 597, conforming state law to federal law for registration of appraisal management companies.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to bring state law into conformity with federal law for registration of appraisal management companies. The bill broadens who must verify and report certain statements to the Real Estate Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board by requiring that each owner of the appraisal management company must report and meet the standards for registration. Currently, the registration requirements only applies to owners who are employees of or consultants for the AMC. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 597.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 600, relating to preservation of biological evidence obtained through criminal investigations and trials.
The gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill before you essentially turns a directive into a study resolution, but not officially by that way. What we're doing here is this bill is directing the Secretary of DMAPS to study and perform an investigation on the methods of storing and preserving biological materials that are obtained by law enforcement in criminal matters. It requires that the Secretary submit a proposed plan along with proposed legislation, creating a program for the centralized storage and preservation of such evidence. The plan and legislation should be submitted to the Senate President and the House Speaker on or before January 1st, 2020. It's the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 600.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill take effect from its passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting, 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective for passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 625, clarifying and defining authority of State Athletic Commission.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill updates and clarifies the Athletic Commission's regulations over boxing and mixed martial arts by updating references to the national authorities whose rules the Commission follows, clarifies the Commission's rulemaking authority. It expands the standards for licensing of sponsors, participants, referees, judges, managers, trainers, and matchmakers, as well as broadens the standards for suspension or revocation of a license, including making it grounds for taking action against a license if a licensee has a direct or indirect financial interest in the outcome of any contest or event. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting, a majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 625.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 633, authorizing Board of Physical Therapy conduct criminal background checks on applicants for licenses.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2018, the West Virginia Board of Physical Therapy joined the Physical Therapy Licensure Compact. As part of participation in the compact, each state must implement a background check requirement, including obtaining results from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI and state police require statutory authorization to perform such checks. This bill provides the Board of Physical Therapy with the authority to conduct criminal history record checks and provide the rulemaking authority necessary to do so. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting, a majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 633.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 655, relating to conservation districts generally.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to clarify and codify the State Conservation Committee has the authority to administer a conservation grant program that provides financial assistance to conservation districts and others for approved conservation projects. This bill also clarifies that the committee may disperse grants to other entities working in conjunction with conservation districts on approved conservation projects. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 97 ayes, 0 nays, 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 655.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action to the House or the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 657, providing consumer protection regarding self-propelled farm equipment.
Gentleman from the 27th, Douglas Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, the state consumer protection law related to new motor vehicle warranties applies only to Class A and certain Class B motor vehicles, meaning cars, pickup trucks, vans, and self-propelled chassis of motorhomes. What this bill does is expand the law to cover warranties for self-propelled farming vehicles with a horsepower unit of 35 or greater. As a result, consumers of agricultural vehicles would be entitled to numerous protections to ensure that a manufacturer honors any express warranty for the vehicle. Manufacturers would be required to make repairs to the agricultural vehicle when notified of any nonconformity with the warranty during the warranty period or within 1 year after its purchase, whichever period is longer. If the manufacturer or an authorized dealer is unable to repair a defect or a condition that substantially impairs the use or market value of the vehicle after a reasonable number of attempts, the manufacturer must replace that vehicle. The code provides that a reasonable number of attempts is presumed to be 3 attempts unless the condition or defect results in a condition likely to cause death or serious injury, in which case a reasonable number of attempts is 1. That's a summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 1 nay, 1 member absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 657.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 658, relating to motor vehicle salesperson licenses.
The gentleman from the 28th, Douglas Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 658 eliminates the blanket restriction on issuing a motor vehicle salesperson license to an individual who has previously committed a felony on any financial matter. The restriction would only apply when an applicant has committed a felony involving a financial transaction involving the sale or purchase of a motor vehicle. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 85 ayes, 13 nays, 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 658.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill take effect from its passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 4 nays, 1 member absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 672, authorizing school building authority to promulgate legislative rules.
The gentleman from the 48th, Douglas Hamrick, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill ratifies the school building authority's proposed rule changes, which were reviewed and authorized by LOSIA on February 19th. The bill repeals Title 164, Series 1 of the Code of State Regulations, School Building Authority and Procedures Handbook, and Series 6 SBA Reporting Procedures because they were procedural rather than legislative. Series 2 Funding School Building Authority Project, Series 3 SBA School Planning and Design Criteria, Series 4 SBA Project Administration and Review, Series 5 SBA Contract and Agreements, and Series 7 School Access Safety Act are revised by deleting provisions that are procedural in nature. The intent of the proposed revisions are to reflect industry standards to make the rules compliant with changes made by the West Virginia Board of Education in Policy 6200 and meet the state's directives for localized decision-making. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman from the 44th, Doggett Hannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I voted against this bill in committee, and I plan to do so again today. During Education Committee, we had an executive staff member from the SBA come up and field questions. And I asked him if these rules would make it easier to combine schools and create a comprehensive educational facility. The response I received was that it would definitely enhance the process to do so. As a large opponent of consolidated schools, I cannot in good conscience vote for this bill, and I would urge the others to do the same.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 85 ayes, 15 nays, 0 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 672.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will be entered the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move the bill take effect from its passage.
The lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 100 ayes, 0 nays, 0 members absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 673, relating to public higher education accountability and planning.
For what purpose does the gentleman from the 67th, Delegate Doyle, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I would ask unanimous consent that this be laid at the foot of bills. I've come up with some questions over here that I'd like to take up with the chairman, if that's all right with him and the body.
Foot of all bills or foot of bills on third reading?
Well, there's only one more bill on third reading.
Foot of all
I think.
bills?
Yeah.
Okay. The gentleman from the 67th asks unanimous consent that the bill be moved to foot of all bills on today's calendar. Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. The bill will be moved to the foot of all bills on third reading. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 676, relating to off-road vehicle recreation.
The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to require the Commissioner of Highways to provide a digital roadmap capable of displaying the types of roads or highways using the classifications of primitive or unimproved, graded, drained, soil, gravel, or stone surface, paved but unpainted, roads with a center line or more than 2 lanes, and interstate highways. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. Majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 676.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read, but the clerk will be in the title of the bill. The lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from its passage.
Lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 2 nays, 0 members absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. At this time, Chair asks unanimous consent to return to further consideration of Senate Bill 537 for the purpose of a title amendment. Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. Clerk will please report the title of Senate Bill 537.
Senate Bill 537.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Ellington moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment on committee substitute of Senate Bill 537. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Lady in the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Subject to announcements, I move the House stand in recess until 5 p.m.
The lady from the 49th moves that subject to announcements, the House stand in recess until 5 o'clock. Are there announcements? The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Republican members of the House will caucus at 4:30 p.m.
The gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on the Judiciary will meet at 3:30 in the committee room, and the agenda will be posted.
The gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Ellington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the members on the Health Committee, there is a luncheon over in the Health Committee room, so you're welcome to join that.
The gentleman from the 12th, Delegate Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have lunch again in 2:04. It's going to be a little late because we are ahead of what I thought the schedule would be, and I thank the Speaker for starting at 9 o'clock this morning, but it's from, I think it's called Olive Tree, and it's beef and different things, so it should be here between 12:30 and 1, 2:04, if anybody wants to stop. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the remarks on Senate Bill 4 by my friend and colleague from the 18th District be printed in the appendix of the Journal.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objections to the request. Remarks will be printed. The gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I omitted Republicans will caucus here in the chamber.
The gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two announcements today. First, I'd like to announce the Democrats will caucus in the House Gov Org room at 4:30. The Democrats will caucus in House Gov Org at 4:30. And also, Mr. Speaker, if you'll indulge me, on behalf of Delegate Longstreth, Angie Lucy, and myself, we have a group of students and faculty from our home area in the North Gallery. They're students from Reesville Middle and West Fairmont Middle School, and they came down to see how the work of the people is done. Please give them a round of applause.
The gentleman from the 36th, Delegate Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By way of announcement, I'd like to introduce our pages of the day from East Bank Middle School. I've got Sarah Davis, Rebecca Lane, Madison Branham, Caleb Knopp, Sam Peters, Penny Eastep, Lily Eastep, Casey Kirk, Casey Adams, Trace Arms, Jake Walker, Chandler Newell, Ethan Chambers, Taylor Burnett, Mackenzie King, Ayana Newkirk, and Chloe Step. If the House will make them feel welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 42nd, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Also, by way of announcement, we have 3 pages here with us today from Eastern Greenbrier Middle School. If they would stand when I call their name. Cole Snyder, and he is escorted by his parents. In our South Gallery, Stephen Snyder and Wendy Snyder. Also, we have Bogie Salai and Benedict Salai. They are escorted by their mother, Monica Varesh. If the House will please make them welcome.
The gentleman from the 60th, Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to inform the body that my daughter, Gwyneth, was inducted into the National Honor Society this morning. Thank you, sir.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is a motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand in recess until 5 o'clock. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it. Chair declares the House in recess until 5 o'clock.